Okay, it's been a while, but we're going to do a video and we're talking about association and causation, which is something you're going to kind of recognize and be familiar with, especially related to science. So let's go ahead and talk about correlation, causation, association. Trying to decide what to say now and what to say for later. Let's save it all for later. Okay, so here's a graph. We're doing sunglasses sold and total ice cream sales for the 8 days shown below. So I'm going to plot points on my graph. I'm going to do sunglasses is on the bottom. So I'm going to look for 110, which is about in the middle, and 130, which is about right here. So there's my first point. I have 130 and 210. I have 175 and 400, 220 and 450, 185 and 400, 215, 550, 190 and 400. Keep getting distracted. And 150 and 320. 20. Okay, so that's about where those points are from the chart. If you notice things we've talked about, there seems to be a positive correlation. We'll check and see, but it's going up, increasing as sunglass sales increase, ice cream sales increase. So there seems to be a positive correlation. So if you put these in your calculator, stat edit, and this is L1 and this is L2, that's your X and your Y. And then you do stat calc for, you should get the equation y equals 2.9x minus 139.8. And the correlation coefficient R is equal to 0.95. So there is a strong correlation, and it's positive. Remember, the closer you are to 0, the better the correlation. But here's where we're going to talk about causation. Do you think buying more sunglasses causes ice cream sales to rise? So do people buying sunglasses make them go buy ice cream? Probably not. So let's say no. They're related in that maybe when it's hot or sunny, people buy more of both. So sunglasses and ice cream sales are correlated, but they're not caused. So there's a difference between correlation, just means it looks like a line on a graph, and caused, which means one thing makes the other thing happen. So let's go down to our definitions right here. Okay, causation occurs when a change in one variable produces a change in another. So that's kind of your dependent and independent variables. But association is the same thing as correlation. It can happen between two things, not necessarily caused. And this is one of those things when you read in magazines and newspapers that things get kind of fuzzy when we're assuming one thing happens because of another thing, when really they're changing at the same time, but they're not causing. So here's really important is if you have a controlled experiment, you can prove causation. Otherwise, you don't always know if there's a causation there or not. So Association just means you have a high correlation coefficient. Correlation coefficient tells you about correlation, not about causation. So you have to remember to kind of think through everything that you're looking at to decide if it's really caused or if it's just a correlation. Okay, so let's go down to the next part. Okay, so here's a graph that shows the association between consumption of margarine in pounds and the divorce rate in Maine per 1,000 people. The correlation coefficient is 0.99. So the correlation is going to be strong and positive. Because it's a great correlation. It very much makes a straight line, and it looks really good when you're talking about just graphing the data. And as the consumption of margarine increases, the divorce rate in Maine increases also. And we'll talk about this tomorrow, but if you think about it, it kind of probably made you laugh because according to the chart, someone can make the argument that eating more butter makes the divorce rates increase. So think about what that really means and if that's really a causation. Does eating margarine cause divorce rates to increase? It's probably correlated, but there's probably not really a cause. So let's look down at the next part on the bottom and let's talk about what we're just talking about. Okay, so this is just, we're just going to think these through. So is there causation? Is there correlation? Remember, association is the same as correlation. Between the cost of a family's vacation and the size of their home. I would say yes to correlation. Because more expensive family vacations, those people are going to have bigger homes. So there probably is a positive correlation. And it doesn't have to be positive, it could be negative. Okay, but do we think that the amount of money families spend on vacations causes them to have a bigger house? I don't think so. So I don't think there is a causation. There's definitely a correlation. Those things are related to each other. So let's talk about why they're related. Probably has to do with how much money a family has. So if a family has a higher income, that could cause them to take a more expensive vacation. Or if a family has a higher income, that might cause them to buy a bigger house. But just the cost of a vacation and the size of their home is not going to be caused. So if I wanted a causation, I might say income and house size. Because I would think that the higher the income, the bigger the house size, and that would cause someone to buy a bigger house, their income, not what kind of vacation they go on, if that makes sense. So that one I might say that's a causation. Okay, time spent exercising and the number of calories burned. I would say that there is a correlation, and it's positive. And I think this is a causation, so I'm going to say yes to causation. Now, there's multiple things that, well, no, not really. Yes, causation. The more time you spend exercising, the more calories you burn. And it's the exercising that makes the calories get burned. So there is a causation. You could do exercise and weight, because there's multiple things that go into your weight. Just exercise couldn't necessarily cause your weight to go down, because if you're eating too much, you could still be exercising and your weight would not go down. So again, those might not even be correlated, depending on there's too many other factors that would change if they're correlated or not. So we're going to go through some of this tomorrow in class before we do the exercise and talk about some of the differences, and then hopefully that will make sense with the correlation and causation. So see you tomorrow.